you all like that montage. Figured it'd be fun to try it out. It's also way less time consuming. It's a video like a few seconds a day rather than what I was doing before, which was like sometimes 30 to 45 minutes of like telling stories, and I'm walking, so I'm trying to concentrate, and then I'm almost getting hit by cars crossing streets, so I forget where I was. It's a whole mess. But if you liked the longer format of the OB/GYN Psych videos, which I'll link those above if you haven't watched them already, I'll go back to doing those. It's okay, I promise. Just let me know. Now for the recap. For those people that are interested in neurology, or just for funsies, like watching what it's like to be in these rotations, or you're doing the rotation coming up soon, I'll give a relatively quick, a few stories thrown in, peppered around, but like mostly kind of more bullet point-ish style summary of what to expect in a given rotation, in this case, neurology. This recap will include a list of the different things that I got to do and see, how my expectations for the content and schedule of the rotation stacked up to reality, and a spitball description of the types of people that I encountered in this specialty, like the personality vibes of the specialty, based on what I've seen. Plus a couple of bonus miscellaneous thoughts at the end, so do stick around. All right, let's go. What I got to do or see. Let me go get my list. I actually wrote them down. Mind my sweats. I found this easier. I would just like, as I went along every day, write down stuff that I saw in my handy dandy notebook. Name that children's show. Blue's Clues. I'm obviously tired. All right, let's read this off. Meningioma was one of the first things that I saw. If you're gonna have a brain tumor, this is the brain tumor to have. It's benign for the most part, slow growing. I saw a brand new diagnosed Chiari type 1 malformation. This girl had had all these symptoms for years and years, and then they finally did imaging and they found out like, oh my god, you have a Chiari type 1 malformation. This explains all your symptoms. It's a very fixable thing too. In this case, it's like the less severe kind of type 1, type 2, type 1 less severe. It's when like the cerebellum, like in the back lower part of your brain that controls your balance and coordination. There's this little section at the bottom, the cerebellar tonsils, and the tonsils can kind of get squished into the foramen magnum where your spinal cord is in the back of your head. But anyway, that was really cool to see. Saw the classic shuffling gait of the, I don't know why that was so fast. They're not fast, they're slow. The shuffling gait of people with Parkinson's, like the narrow-based shuffle gait. Saw Charcot-Marie tooth disease. It's like the pes cavus, like where you're super high arch in your feet, and the hammer toe. Also saw Parkinson's pill roll tremor, pretty much like all the Parkinson's features. Saw shingles. Somebody had shingles and they had like hyperreflexia because of it. Saw like a positive Hoffman sign on someone. So you like, if you kind of flick someone's middle finger, and if their thumb goes like this when you do that, and that's a sign of upper motor neuron damage, was associated with shingles in this person's case. Spinal stenosis, compression of the spinal cord, anything along those lines. Definitely saw lots of that. Botox injections for migraines. Yeah, you kind of like forehead here and here, and some here and back here. There's a whole bunch, and they just kind of paralyze those muscles, and it helps, at least temporarily, for like I think 6 months or so. Helps people with migraines sometimes. So that's cool. Tons of MS, multiple sclerosis. Tons and tons and tons. Ugh. This is less of a bullet point type summary than I want it to be, because I feel like it's good to explain some of these things. Okay, sorry, but I'm gonna keep going. So trigeminal neuralgia, when people get this really sharp, fleeting, really bad like facial pain, it can like radiate into the jaw, a little bit into the neck, up here, triggered by even just like a breeze on your face. So it's like really debilitating for a lot of people. Anyway, so saw that a couple of times. Occipital neuralgia, occipital back of the head, nerve pain, essential tremor, a hereditary type of tremor. It's not really at rest, but when you go and try to, do something, it gets worse. Ooh, a really interesting one, neuro-Behcet's syndrome. So Behcet's is one of those things you learn in the first couple years of med school. Professors teaching are like, yeah, this is super rare, but here it is. Well, I saw that. That's really cool. Neuro-Behcet's. It's an autoimmune disorder. It's basically where your body is attacking its own blood vessels, and it causes all kinds of problems. This one in particular is like neuro-focused Behcet's, so she was getting like sharp nerve pain everywhere because of it. It was really interesting, and like all the people who were on the case were like, ooh. Oh, and then there was somebody who had pulmonary sarcoidosis. I'm not even gonna explain sarcoidosis. If you're curious and want to Google it, sarcoidosis, sarcoidosis. And the same person who had the pulmonary sarcoid, they also had what looked to be myasthenia gravis symptoms, and it was this older man. So we got to do the whole like ice pack test on him, the looking up test where you tell him, okay, follow my finger and then hold it up here, and you have them keep looking for 30 seconds, and after a while their eyelids start to fatigue and they like start drooping down. They're still trying to look up, but their eyelids just fall. And that's just because as part of this disease, like especially the smaller muscles are affected first. You get like easy fatigability of these small muscles. So it can get bad, like swallowing can become a problem if it's not treated, you know, so you gotta get on it. But like, just interesting to see those classic tests being done and like seeing that in real time, like, oh wow, the ice pack thing is totally real. Like we just did it and it works. So a case of normal pressure hydrocephalus, basically where the ventricles in the brain, the areas where there's like big sections of cerebrospinal fluid, they, for a number of different reasons, get really big and they start compressing the rest of the brain, and it causes this set of symptoms. Wet, wobbly, wacky, that rings a bell for any of you studying. Oh, another super rare one that the residents and attendings were like, this is an interesting case, come here, take a look at this one, was anti-yo syndrome. So anti-yo antibodies, right? So autoimmune, you have these antibodies against yo, anti-yo, and they're attacking stuff they're not supposed to be attacking. So it turns out these particular antibodies will attack a lot of the times the cerebellum, and it can cause all kinds of like symptoms where patients can't walk anymore, they can't balance, their eye movements are uncoordinated, and they can't really function that well. And it's usually due to underlying ovarian cancer. Now they're having to do imaging and stuff for like to see if they have ovarian masses or something that could explain why these antibodies are there. It's just like this whole puzzle. They were piecing it together and they were just so excited about it, and it was a cool case. And yeah, anyway. Oh god, another one. Vertebral artery dissection. Okay, this guy was like young, you know, I think early 30s. The layers of the vessel walls themselves can separate for a variety of reasons. Often it's due to trauma. In this case, it was just spontaneous. The guy didn't have any trauma that he, you know, told us about at least. So this like random vertebral artery dissection, which when that happens, it can close off kind of and make it so that blood kind of stagnates, and then it can start throwing clots, because if blood stagnates, it starts to clot. And then, so a bunch of clots spewed out all over his cerebellum. All these strokes, you look at his imaging and it's just like pinpoint, blah, blah, blah. These emboli that threw out from this seemingly totally random vertebral artery dissection in a really healthy guy. And this guy, you know, part of having cerebellar issues is you can't like measure out your distances correctly when you're trying to like reach and do something. Hands out like this, eyes closed, and you say, okay, touch your nose with this hand, and he would go like this. Luckily, you know, since he's pretty young and otherwise healthy, with some physical therapy and everything, he's gonna be probably just fine in the long run. But he was just sitting there, he's like, man, it's so annoying. Like I try to like feed myself and I keep hitting my cheek. I can't like just make it go where I want it to go. I'm like, yeah, we know. It'll get better with time. It's just a long process. And yeah, so that's called dysmetria. Dysmetria? Maybe they're both right. Maybe they're both wrong. I don't know, tell me. Anyway, I also saw status migrainosus, constant migraines. Also came across psychogenic non-epileptic seizures. Glioblastoma multiforme, the nastiest type of brain cancer. Really sad. Saw a young woman who had a pulmonary embolism, scary stuff. A couple of subdural hemorrhages. So these veins between the brain and the skull get, you know, broken or start bleeding, and then it's just like a slow bleed. And so over time, these people get like confused and disoriented, and you check the imaging and you can see this, and I'll show a picture of this crescent of blood showing up on imaging, and it's like super important to catch. All right, tons of epilepsy. I was on the epilepsy monitoring unit, which I will talk about in just a second. Left upper quadrant synopia. So like, can you see my fingers here? Here? Nope, can't even see your hand. You know, like that kind of thing. Pretty interesting. Ooh, saw someone with the classic like ulnar claw neuropathy. They like had wasting of their muscles right in here. They couldn't open and close their fingers like this, like they would just collapse. Test on step 1, I remember like hating learning the ulnar claw and the other claw, like the hand of benediction or whatever, and like all that. It does come in handy on your neurology rotation, or at least it can. I saw it, I'm like, oh, that's it, that's the claw. Like, it's not just in books, it's real life. Saw people with Raynaud syndrome, where in the cold, their fingers get like white and purpley and can't feel, and burning pain. Not fun, especially in Michigan right now. It's starting to get cold, it's annoying. Tons and tons and tons of dementia, especially in the outpatient setting. Also lots of diabetic and chemo related neuropathy. And I did see someone who, like, okay, if you have Parkinson's disease and it's pretty advanced, and if you're a candidate for deep brain stimulation, they basically have these, I don't know, this device that can stimulate certain areas of the brain that can help reduce your tremor. And I think it also helps other aspects of Parkinson's, but not others. I don't really know the details on that, but it was really cool to see, because they were like adjusting it in the office, and you could see, he's like, did you just do something? And he's like, yeah, I did just adjust this a tiny bit. And he's like, oh wow, like I can definitely tell a difference right now. Circling back to multiple sclerosis, there's this finding on imaging, Dawson's fingers. So I'll throw up a picture. It's basically like these areas of brightness that show up around the ventricles and they kind of go out and radiate out from the ventricles, like fingers kind of looks like in a lot of cases. That was associated in that same patient with optic neuritis, which is, again, classic association with MS. So cool to see that. Okay, super rare. The guy that saw this is the radiologist. He pulls this up and he goes, oh, I think he's in his mid 80s. Like the guy is still sharp as a tack, loves what he does. And he was like this really awesome teacher. And he pulls us over, he goes, get over here. I have never seen this in my life ever. And you're like, whoa, what is it? And it was this stroke, but it was in this very specific spot in the optic tract. So this person had bilateral, usually if you have a stroke, you can get like unilateral vision loss, but this person had bilateral vision loss. So like ophthalmology was involved and they had like workups for entirely different things because stroke doesn't normally present with bilateral vision loss. And so then they finally do this imaging and the radiologist is looking, and he goes, oh, there it is. That's why they have bilateral vision loss right there. That is so rare. That's the first time I've ever seen that. So interesting. He calls everyone up. He's like, this is what happened. This is what happened. Isn't this so cool? Wow. Like we should write this up. This should be a case report. I have been in practice for 40 years and never have I seen anything like this. And we're like, wow. And that's a list of everything that I was able to see during my rotation. So as far as environments go or practice settings within neurology, starting with outpatient general neurology, thoughts on that? That was completely nuts. Bonkers. I loved the doctor that I was working with, but I would never want to do that in life ever again, period. It was too crazy. We're seeing, 45 patients a day, and that was like normal for this practice per doctor. It was hectic. Don't get me wrong, it was super cool to see a ton of different like pathology, and I was able to see the new patients by myself, which helped the time go faster. I was able to spend more time in the room, 20-30 minutes rather than like 10 minutes max with each patient otherwise for the follow-ups. But most of the 3 days that I was in outpatient, I was holding up the wall and taking up space. One of those outpatient doctors was this huge, like way into yoga guy, total yogi. He had pictures of himself in different yoga poses throughout the office. All of his certifications were all over the walls. He's also this hardcore vegan. And during lunch, he opened up this like fancy looking chocolate bar and I kind of eyeball it. And me being shamelessly obsessed with chocolate, ask him what it is. He says it's this Vietnamese brand from like a yoga retreat he did recently or something. But I saw it was like 100% dark. And I was like, wow, that's next level. Like I love a good 70-80% dark, but 100, woo. And he kind of like snort laughs, like, what are you talking about? And he goes, I don't do sugar. And I almost laughed, okay? I almost busted up laughing. I thought he was joking. Before I realized, I looked like I caught myself just in time because I realized he was serious. And then I just knew I couldn't relate anymore. So I just got back to talking about Nom instead. Like, what was that like? Oh, so good. Okay, good. All right, and then my 2 days on inpatient community hospital setting, doing general neurology consults, that was way better for me, way more my speed. I got to see a bunch of people by myself, practice full exams and presentations without feeling like rushed, like in the outpatient setting. Then inpatient stroke service at the main big like academic hospital. That was, again, good, like as far as the pace went. It wasn't too hectic. It was pretty busy, but it wasn't that bad. But it was mostly like glorified shadowing for at least the first few days. It wasn't until the last day that I got to see people by myself. I guess they probably just wanted to make sure I wasn't a complete idiot before like letting me go and see stroke patients by myself. Which I get. I mean, stroke stuff in general is just pretty high stakes. So they probably wanted to be sure that I had a good handle on like what was important to ask about when, you know, talking to somebody who might have had a stroke and what exactly to examine for, because it's a little bit different. It was okay. I mean, I get why it was more shadowing that week, but I just would have liked to maybe have done a little bit more by myself. I learned a ton, and wow, the different styles of rounding that the different attending physicians have make a big difference. The uber efficient ones, thank you, you're the best. Then my week on the epilepsy monitoring unit. So a pretty unique setting. There aren't a ton of epilepsy monitoring units in the state. So there are like, only a handful of fellowship trained epilepsy specialists here. Our unit has 4 beds. People stay for multiple days. And the entire idea is to record a seizure while they're here. So they're in these rooms decked out with like video monitoring, and they have like these caps with the electrodes, you know, and 24/7 EEG monitoring. And to provoke a seizure, Patients will try, you know, the flashing lights, sleep deprivation, or just like doing or watching things that stress them out or annoy them. So somebody brought like coloring books. And at first I was like, what was going on? She's like, no, it is annoying. Like, I hate coloring books. And I'm like, what? So she's sitting there like begrudgingly, just like so mad, coloring a mandala. And I'm like, this is to each their own. Like, coloring for me is super relaxing, but you do you, girl. And then someone else was considering putting annoying political ads on a loop and having those on all day. And I'm like, that would do it for me. That's a good idea. If I ever have to be in an epilepsy monitoring unit, that's what I'm doing. Neuroradiology, so chill, loved it. That's all I have to say. I actually really like radiology, like a lot. The vibes are just immaculate. They're so laid back. We just got to, you know, get pulled over when they saw cool stuff and then go back to studying. It's a good time, no complaints. I'll try to zip through the rest of this really quick. Expectations versus reality of the content of the rotation. So this go around, it amazed me how different each student's schedule was, and therefore like how varied our experiences were. I don't mean this in a bad way. You just can't have every single student spend a meaningful amount of time in all the different settings with all the different attendings in just a 4-week rotation. I get that. Some students got more time in like outpatient settings and different locations than I was. Others did days in peds neurology or neurosurgery, and they didn't do EMU or stroke or radiology. So it was actually really fun to like ask my friends like, hey, what are you doing? Because even within the rotation, it wasn't like OB-GYN or psych where everyone does the same things for the same amount of time, 95% of the time, because everyone was running around doing completely different things in completely different settings. So it's kind of a little bit more fun in that way, but the content did vary much more drastically in neurology than it did for OB-GYN or psych, which I did not expect, but it wasn't a bad thing. Now, expectations versus reality of the schedule. So this rotation had the biggest swings and variations in amount of like hours that I've had so far. Some days I was there like an hour and they're like, yeah, nothing's going on. We don't really have anything for you to do, so just go home and study. And other days I was there for almost 12 hours because we were go, go, go. I was just kind of at the mercy of whatever attending was on that day or whatever residents were on as far as like when they felt like the med student should go home, you know? And all the different attendings apparently have very different ideas of how long med students should stick around. Fine. Some days were painful. Most of the time it was fine. But I averaged around 30 hours a week, which is about expected. It just varied a lot, like I said. Weekends off, usually getting to the hospital at like between 8 and 9, going home at about 2 or 3. Really not bad, except for sometimes those outpatient days that made me feel a little dead inside. All right, types of people and personalities. Okay, I didn't meet anyone quite like Dr. Glaucom Flecken's neurologist character. And to be honest, the neurology people that I came in contact with, probably the most diverse in their personalities that I've come across so far compared to other rotations. But they did all have this one thing in common. Okay, self-proclaimed proud nerds. Those are not my words. Literally, they would say this to me. They're like, yeah, we're nerds and we know it, and like, we know everyone thinks that's what we are, and we are that, and we don't care. They wear that nerd badge with honor. They own it, unashamed, as they should. I loved that about them. They all had this really, I like what I like, and not everyone has to like what I do. I got nothing to prove. That kind of vibe. Not in like a standoffish, rude way, but like in an unruffled, self-assured way. It was very nice. I liked it. So if you have gotten in touch with and come to terms with your inner nerd, neurologists may be your people. And then here's a bonus miscellaneous thought here at the end. I cannot emphasize this enough. Living close to the hospital is superior to living not as close to the hospital. And it will sometimes save your ass. Why do I know this? Let me tell you a story. I had a mandatory lecture with a bunch of attendings as well as, you know, fellow students that I didn't know was in person at the hospital until I woke up 10 minutes before it started and saw my rotation group chat blew up. So I literally launched out of bed, full panic attack, threw on the nearest scrubs. I'm pretty sure my bottoms were inside out, grabbed my white coat, grabbed a scrunchie, sprinted out the door. I'm not exaggerating. Not one bit. Sprint, full on. If there is a word to describe running faster than sprinting, that's what I was doing. Eyes half open, by the way. Remember, I had just woken up literally 45 seconds previous to this sprinting. It felt like a bad teenage drama movie sequence where in the middle of my like cheeks flapping in the wind, arms pumping, pants inside out, feet red in the face, eyes puffy, not even fully open, no makeup. The scene would pause and be like, in my voice narrating, you may be asking, how did I get here? You know, like, you know, like that kind of thing. Yeah, well, I look like an idiot, but I made it with 30 seconds to spare, baby. Yeah, I did. I may have walked in sweating like a nun at a cucumber farm, but I made it. Looking back now, I can laugh at myself, but in the moment, man, that was like the most high adrenaline thing that's happened to me in a while. So embarrassing. Whatever. Anyway, moral of the story, live close to your hospital so that you can make it to stuff on time. Not look like a complete moron walking in late to mandatory stuff. There you go. Pro tip. Again, if this recap style video is helpful, let me know by hitting the like button, comment below, DM me, all the above, or if you'd just rather hear the stories, or if you like the montages, whatever you like, just tell me. Or whatever you don't like, also tell me. It's okay, you're not gonna hurt my feelings. I just wanna give people what they want. My next rotation is going to be an elective in interventional radiology. Wish me luck, and if you've already done this rotation, give me and everyone else watching your best advice for how to do well on this rotation. Just throw it down in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. Again, if you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe, all those things. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and catch you next time.